Welcome to Talking in Stations. This is Matterall. Here with Ashtarothi today.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and today we are outside this wonderful blue sun.
Very nice. All right, so today we'll talk a little bit about what happened yesterday and today in EVE Online. And then we will look at some of the structures that are destroyed and left in Delve. I think there was some action over in Catch too. Maybe Catch has fallen. We'll talk about Brave's former headquarters over there and what that means for them. We'll also meet a player from Waffles. He's actually a director. His name is Analiese Aubernet. And he'll tell us about what's going on over in Syndicate and Placid area, I believe. But first, let's check in with what's going on in Iceland. I believe there's a volcano.
Yeah, well, I mean, Iceland is pretty famous for having a lot of volcanoes and some pretty impressive, majestic, and terrifying eruptions over the past year. Or over the years, rather. And in the last week or so, there's been a lot of earthquakes, and we've heard a lot of like, oh, there's going to be another eruption, and it started just a couple hours ago. You probably know more about it than I do at this point.
Yeah, the actual eruption started a few hours ago. The mountain is called, I'll never pronounce that right. It actually looks like something from Cult of Cthulhu or something, like.
Is it the one? Is it the one that is also in EVE?
Fagradalsdale. Just been.
Does it start with E?
No, it starts with Fagrad.
Okay. Yep. This is a different volcano.
Let me see if I can pull it up here on our notes. Just give me 1 second. I'll pull up the thing. But actually, yeah, they've been going through weeks of like earthquakes. Even animals have been getting seasick, which is horrible if you think about that. So I'll pull this thing up. We can actually see the eruption here. Right there. Yeah, so I feel bad for people, and well, this is the actual.
And in the event that people don't realize, the reason why this is EVE news is because CCP has basically is based in Iceland. They're an Icelandic company. So even though the EVE servers are in London, and therefore like a natural disaster on Iceland won't necessarily impact like the actual day-to-day running of EVE Online, this is very likely. We wish our best to all of the CCP devs and all of the people on Iceland whenever they're doing this, whenever these kinds of things happen. And stay safe, please. But it's gorgeous. That's what I was saying. Like it's terrifying, and yet, like, have you seen some of this stuff from previous? The thing is that once the volcano starts to erupt, it actually creates like thunderstorms within the
gas
plume.
Cloud?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think actually there was maybe 10 years ago there was a big eruption that closed down transatlantic airline flights for a while. It's a couple days because the smoke was just all in that airspace that people cross over going to Europe from the United States and Canada. So
I remember that either delayed a CSM meeting or like stranded them there or threatened to. There was something about like a CSM trip because the CSM traveled to Iceland once or twice a year, depending on when it is as well.
Yeah, it might have. I don't remember exactly what was going on. I just remember hearing about it in the news. You're right. Actually, it did affect because we heard about it inside the game as well. So that's crazy. And here it is again. It's another eruption, but it's kind of nice because maybe the earthquakes will stop. I think it was really interesting because the earthquakes their epicenters were like in 3 or 4 different spots, but they started moving into one area from 3 directions, right? I'm thinking Triglavians. And then at one point they were all kind of coalescing around this volcano. That's why they knew it was a volcano.
I think it's pretty telling that what 2020 did to us, that now we're like, oh, It's one of those quaint, good natural disasters, like a volcano exploding.
Yeah. Well, there was earthquakes, and they were unexplained in, I think it was Puerto Rico, and they had like hundreds per day. It was unbelievable, and there was we're trying to figure out like where are those earthquakes? What are they doing? Where are they going? I think they explained it as possible volcanic activity, or it was two plates that came together right where Puerto Rico was. But I think it eventually all subsided. It was just a really weird thing. I don't know how that one resolved itself, but this one resolves an explosion of lava and magma coming out of the mountain. So Iceland is keeping its reputation of beauty and just craziness. Okay, let's talk about EVE Online and go to...
Speaking of major destruction.
Not bad. I like that.
All right.
Yeah, so here we have, let me see if I can zero this in a bit better. Some, this was yesterday in F2O. As you can see, there's a considerable fleet of, looks like mostly Avatar Titans firing on the Keepstar using their conventional weaponries, their cannons, essentially. And they melted that thing down, I think, relatively quick. I think it was less than a half hour, maybe 15 minutes to a half hour. And that Keepstar is now destroyed. And right after that happened, a Titan that was inside of it, but manned, popped out. It was a Ragnarok. And so they were able to capitalize on that and kill that as well. I think
right. So if you're in a structure, when it goes pop, you just appear basically right next to where the structure was. Just like if you were to be logged out and a structure goes pop, when you log in, you will basically emergency warp to the place where the structure was. So this person was, I don't know, sightseeing, looky-looing, probably looking outside of the structure while it was happening, didn't understand the mechanics. The structure goes pop, and before he realizes it, he's also next in line.
He was a bridging Titan, but I don't know if he was maybe trying to get out. Now, this is the F2O Keepstar, so I'll look for that kill mail. There's been a lot of destruction since then. I think it's actually on the second page here.
So one of the things I was thinking about, because we're going to be talking about a couple of Keepstars here, is just a little bit about what Keepstars are and why they're so important. So Keepstars are basically, there's player-built structures. There's the old system, and then there's the new system. The new system is Upwell structures. And Upwell structures are divided into, the non-flex structures are the citadels, which are military and corporation leadership structures, engineering complexes, which are industry and invention, and refineries, which are refineries and moon mining. And so each one of those have their own track, and they have different sizes. So there's medium, large, and extra large. Extra large being the biggest, scariest stuff in the game. And most importantly, some of the extra larges, in particular the Keepstar, which is the Citadel line, the military corporation leadership line, that Keepstar that structure, the Keepstar, allows super capitals to dock, which prior to this was not possible to do in EVE Online for over a decade. So they are incredibly powerful, expensive fortresses that are used by nullsec in order to build their bases out there. And after the outpost changes that happened a couple of years ago, other than NPC nullsec areas, which do have stations to operate out of, these Keepstars represent basically the only kind of living quarters or the primary living quarters, I should say, for people who are living and operating in nullsec.
Yeah, and I'm glad you filled there for a second. Thank you. It took me a while to figure this out because I was looking for the Keepstar destruction in F2O TAC X. There wasn't one because a kill mail was never generated for that structure for some reason. But we know
that is something that happens a lot, especially with Keepstars, because when a kill mail gets so many people, then it literally breaks. Whatever saves, like it's basically the entry becomes so long that CCP fails to generate the kill mail and it's just lost in time. In the past, CCP has gone back when it comes to particularly important kill mails and recreated them. But if it's a major event that draws enough people, chances are there won't be a kill mail for it.
I see. Yeah, this used to be a problem. I think when Keepstars first came out, they didn't generate kill mails at all.
Yep, the first two Keepstars definitely didn't because it took enough people. But like this was a big thing if like somebody whelped a Titan on like a stream or something, like anything that would get like thousands of people on a single kill report would basically break the kill mail system completely.
Got it. So no Keepstar kill mail for F2O, an important Keepstar. But there was this Ragnarok here that got killed. As you can see, he's in the Brooder tribe. He's not in Goonswarm. But I think if you look up that character, he was... he might have left a while ago for maybe an activity, who knows, but he was logged in on the character in the Titan inside the structure when it exploded, which pops you right out, and you're up for grabs at that point. All right.
Somebody's pointing out that the pilot was not in Goons for over 300 days.
Yeah,
now, it is possible, it is true that a lot of people keep their, like obviously supers are often on an alt, and it's not necessary for those alts in a lot of organizations to have to necessarily be part of the same organization, but obviously the plot grows thicker. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Question from Relic Sadab. Why was the Keepstar important? As we pointed out a few days ago in the episode called, you'll probably know this one, Delve Has Fallen. You'll realize that was the last Keepstar. That was the last way out for capital ships. That was the Keepstar that connected Delve to Losec. And so if you are the Imperium and you were thinking of exiting with your super capital, you don't want to just jump those and have security by obscurity. In other words, try to get by without anybody seeing you. Especially in a war zone, because all it takes is one subcapital to see your ship land and have to recap in order to move to the next jump and get tackled. And then they call their friends, and their friends are all nearby and they're all active and they're all awake constantly. So there's always going to be enough people to kill you. It's very dangerous to move by yourself. So what you want to do when you're moving a super capital is, well, here's another scenario. You jump to any structure and tether to it. And that gives you the capacitor that you need and also the safety you need to jump to the next one. But that doesn't work as well anymore because now there's a 30-second delay for the tether. So if you jump to any structure, you have to wait 30 seconds before you're tethered. And a lot of times you get spotted and tackled at that point. So generally, the way that you move super capitals in the situation that people are in now are Keepstars, because you can jump to a Keepstar and you won't be tethered for 30 seconds, but you can dock right up. And so that's a safe jump. That is why you saw at the beginning of this war, or actually the end of the beginning of the war, Pappy put down Keepstar after Keepstar after Keepstar after Keepstar, all the way from like Catch into Aquarius, and then into Delve, and then into the heart of Delve. They did that so they could jump all their super capitals without worrying about getting caught, getting tackled, being taken off guard. That was the railroad into enemy territory, and that's what they built. And so what I'm saying about this F2O Keepstar is the last of 3 railroads out of Delve just had its tracks blown up, and that's why it's important. I was going to show you that on Dotlan just to sink the point.
Now, it is true that if you want to get your stuff out of 1DQ, I think it's still possible to just simply defect and use because didn't they anchor special Keepstars specifically to allow people to
but we're
defect and get out?
I think by raising that point, you're like anyway, we don't want to raise the point of defections or switching sides or any of that. But yeah, you could switch sides. You could also say, I'm just going to asset safety myself into Ermelin. I'll pay my 15% fee, which is about 8 to 12 billion. I could absorb that cost, for instance, and then you're out of the war zone, but you're in Ermelin, and Ermelin itself has its own dangers.
So basically, Right. Each of these low sec, the way it works is if you don't have another structure in the same system to asset safety into, then you have to asset safety to the nearest low sec system. So what that means is that there are a lot of nullsec that basically condenses down to very, very few systems of low sec. So there are these very particular low sec systems that basically everybody asset safeties into, or at least entire regions or several regions asset safety into. So you're basically back in the same place again, where sure there's no bubbles, but you've got to assume that there's at least somebody paying attention at any given time, and it's incredibly dangerous to recover stuff out of there.
Yeah, we talked about this again a few episodes ago, but you can see that F2O no longer exists, which means if you're in 1DQ over here, you can't do this route anymore. And as soon as the jammer went down and was turned on, you were really stuck because you can't get through a jammer unless the jammer goes down and you time it perfectly. You have like I believe you have a 5-minute window once a jammer goes down. So that's gone, but now the structure's gone. So it doesn't matter if the iHub is destroyed and the jammer is destroyed, the Keepstar is now gone. So this road, the railroad, had its tracks blown up here in F2O. And this is why that was an important Keepstar. Now,
right.
Imperium guys will say, and it's true for them, we're all going to fight and die or fight and win in 1DQ. None of us are actually leaving. And that's more true now than it was a few days ago. So that's why that was an important stop.
Yeah. So what's happening here? It's not like while this Keepstar does have tactical advantage, this is not the only Keepstar that has died this week, and it isn't necessarily about why any given Keepstar is important. What's important is two things, really. One, the psychology of these Keepstars to the Imperium, and more important, and also to the enemies of the Imperium. Ever since the creation of the Keepstar and introduction into the game, the Imperium have used this growing pile of the anchored Keepstars as a metric of how powerful they are, as a sign of how established they are as a civilization. And so having all of this be destroyed, yes, it is an excessive amount of Keepstars, but that was the entire point of why they were anchored that way, and therefore burning them, like the whole point was no one's ever going to burn through a whole bunch of, all of these Keepstars. No one would ever uproot us with this. And Pappy is trying to say, oh yeah, well, we'll test that. And at the same time, the Imperium has said that 1DQ is the most important thing, and yet they have to sit there and watch and maintain high morale as Keepstar after Keepstar after Keepstar gets knocked over like dominoes. You like that? That's my cat. That's my cat. So I mean, like, really, Billy's kind of walking over. It's like that, like the cartoon, or not the cartoon, but like the sitcom where the guy gets super, or the person gets super upset, walks over to the fireplace and like slowly starts knocking things off of the fireplace one piece at a time as a tantrum. It really feels like a lot of that. Like they're really making the process of watching. They're telling Goonswarm if they're going to sit there and defend 1DQ, then they have to sit there and watch while everything else burns. And that's pretty nasty.
Yeah, well, and here is something you were just talking about. This was a poster that's altered now. But this was a poster that basically said, come at me, bro. I think the Imperium put out all these Keepstars as a show of force. Like, this propaganda plays exactly into what you're talking about. And the thing about propaganda is it can be used against you when things start going bad. So first of all, this was kind of funny, I thought. These are made up. So these Keepstars here don't actually exist. Their count goes up to like 53, I believe, and 4 or 5 are in 1DQ itself, which would be a heck of a citadel to have to break through. But now you can see they're starting to use this as check boxes, right? As soon as they kill it. And this one's up to date because you can see the D-W, which is the next Keepstar that we'll look at, is listed as destroyed. So yeah, these Keepstars are being destroyed, and they just gave them a list. So this is literally the fortress of Delve, the walls right, or the towers of Delve, just being checked off a list as they get tumbled down. Imperium can turn it around and fight back and win some of these fights, but they are heavily outnumbered.
Isn't this just that timer board all over again, right? Like they had the doom clock. Yeah, it's the doom clock all over again, right? So the Imperium put up propaganda to try to show how much work was ahead of Pappy. Originally with the doom clock, they were keeping track of how long they had to go destroy all of the iHubs before they could Sinojammer it, with the idea that they would perpetuate this clock, wasn't it? Or was it the other way around?
Yeah,
who had the doom clock originally? The Imperium put up the doom clock, right?
Yeah, and they did it because they.
And then basically, Pappy just used it as like a checklist, basically.
Well, yeah, the Imperium put it up so they had some kind of metric. It's very hard for them to say, "Hey, we're making progress too," right? So you have to put up a metric saying, "This is us. Here's a visualization of us resetting iHubs." And so the doom clock will show the progress that Pappy is making, and we're going to show us erasing their progress over and over and over again. And the tool is supposed to basically give you a metric to show the world that you are defending successfully your territory. When it didn't go that way, which it didn't, we all know, it's history now that it didn't go that way, the doom clock was pulled and made private instead of public because it was not working as intended. And Pappy said, wait a minute, there goes our propaganda tool because we can't reverse it on them. So they put up their own doom clock. And that's what we see lately.
And this is very similar. It's where they say, okay, well, look at all these Keepstars we have. And they're like, okay, well, that one's there and that one's there. That one's there. Thank you. Okay. It's an interesting and delicate balance because, as I mentioned, like more than anything else, the Imperium have to keep up their morale in a situation that, let's be frank, is very easy to spin as them losing, even if you just broadly, right? So their membership just has to be able to hear those arguments and be able to process it as like, no, we're not, and believe why they don't. This is why, you see their media engine being so active and so strong and such a a unified position, because it's like they need to understand why they're not losing, and they need to be able to believe in it, and they need to be able to believe, they need to be able to hold the line and not flinch during this time, because either the paper tiger will be exposed, or they might cause themselves to, if they shatter the illusion, then they lose their own membership, and that is the ultimate breaking point of an alliance, right? Like you break. They've said it before. You get them to stop wanting to play, or at least stop wanting to play with that group. If actual confidence within the Imperium falters, then that would be the beginning of the end for for them. But they understand what their strategy is, and they have kept their membership very well informed. There's no confusion. They know exactly what to expect, and they know exactly how to write off the otherwise disastrous stuff that is happening, because they understand or at least they have their own counteraction to the PsyOps game that Villy and Pappy and all them are projecting onto them.
Yeah. All right. So the next Keepstar that went down is in 1DQ. You can see its relationship to the headquarters of Imperium right now, the 1DQ. Sorry, D-TAC-W. Did I say 1DQ? I meant D-TAC-W.
I was about to say, and also a Keepstar went down in 1DQ. No. That would be called burying the lead, Matt, if that was true.
Sorry about that. I misspoke. In relationship to, what's funny? It echoed in my head, and I was like, I just heard myself say something that wasn't. Yeah. So D-TAC-W is now that is actually a very important system in Delve itself. You can see by its proximity that the jump range out of 1DQ is considerable for operations. So you kind of want to see how that's in the middle.
One of the interesting things about all these cutoff tactics is because Delve in particular is attractive for its defensive possibilities, right? It's actually not necessarily the most lucrative region, although that matters less given the current SOV system. But the Imperium chose to go back to Delve after Decline fell specifically because of how defensible it was. And it's defensible because of the choke points leading in and out. But the problem is that the very things that defend you can also trap you. And so if all of these outer edge Keepstars get cut off, then basically they're exposed inside.
Yeah.
Or at least they're completely cut off inside.
So there are some key systems. We won't go into them today, but maybe someday we'll talk about the region in general. But you can see the D-W is usually a military strategic system because it allows really good range to most of the upper constellations, upper region, and kind of the important parts of Delve. Over here, you actually have parts of Aquarius and period bases that sneak into lower Delve. So this is really the heart of the whole area. And so D-W puts you in that 5 light year range jump to a lot of different systems. So again, D-W is usually a key place. I believe the Imperium did use it as a military starting point for their super capital fleet, again, for its range. And so that is a significant loss as well, even though at this point it hasn't really been important for a few weeks, if not months. So what you're seeing, and what you're seeing is a demolition of Delve, and it will continue unless Imperium manages to do what they actually did do in P3, I believe. They took out I think it's over here somewhere. I won't go looking for it because it'll take me forever this way, but I know what I'll do. They managed to actually take this system back. It's now been returned. PS9 right here. So it's test won it back pretty easily. I think it lasted a day, but it's important. That day broke the momentum, or the clock on that system up to 35 days. So they might have been at day 16. Now they're back at day 0, and they've got to climb all the way to 32 or 35. So it did do something by just taking it for one day, but it has now belonged to test again. And if they can continue to do that, they can continue to delay the process of demolition. But that's really all they can do right now. It's all they appear to be able to do right now, unless they commit their super capital fleet, which is unlikely because they will be jammed out of any system that's attacked. They will be jammed out of any system that is attacked in a significant way with capitals. So definitely interesting strategy going on here. It is capture the system, lock the system, destroy everything in the system, move to the next one. Actually, that's not the order. They're moving all over the map. But lock the system, destroy everything in it, erase everything in Delve until you get to 1DQ, and then slowly but surely start wiping out what you can as far as citadels inside of the capital. 1DQ, and that is going to be very difficult. It may take a month or two to even accomplish that, but we won't see that start for another month and a half as well.
Yep. One of the things that's important to note about all this is that there are three factors that go into what's called the active defense multiplier, ADM, of a system, and that would be how many rats have died recently. Basically, you push it up by killing rats and it falls down over time. Same, how much ore has been mined in the system, and how long you've held the system. Those are the only three things that matter. So each one of those are rated 1 through 5, the military index, the industrial index, and what's called the strategic index. But the strategic index is not only help boost your ADM and therefore make it so that it's harder for people to attack your system, but also certain key sovereignty features are tied to specific levels of strategic index, and the most notably being the sinusoidal jammer. So only after you hold a system for so many time can you anchor one of these jammers. And so even if you lose it for a day, that resets the strategic index back to 0. Which is an interesting point, because if the Imperium ever want to counterattack, the more territory that gets taken, the attacking forces have to make a decision about how well they want to fortify the land that they have taken. Otherwise, their ADMs are going to be super low, and it's going to be easier for defenders to harass their progress.
All right, a question or a comment by Pedro McLeod. I wonder if it's McLeod. But it says, it makes sense to burn everything first before you go into 1DQ is what he's talking about. Wormius answers, I would take out the army and burn the assets at your leisure. So those are two different ways of looking at what's left to do in Delve for Pappy if Pappy is to win this conflict. And let me explain what the strategy is, because it's been explained before a few times in public by Pappy leaders, and that is they don't want anything. They don't want any surprises. They want to do this as methodically as they can, and there's a few reasons for that. One is you just don't want surprises that could turn into another M2, right? Because that was a bit of a disaster. It wasn't a straight up fight that was lost, but it was just a technical disaster that created a bad situation for them. And you want to avoid surprises like that. M2 was a surprise. Nobody planned on it. I think Imperium was saying that M2 was an insignificant Keepstar, but it turned into a great opportunity, and they took advantage of it. So what you want to do is make sure nothing unexpected happens. So what is happening to 1DQ right now is it is being island out. And this has happened in EVE and other conflicts as well. So they are destroying everything, erasing structures to create, first of all, just to do a lot of the body work. If you're in a boxing match, to do the body work before you start going for the head or whatever, and that allows less surprises, less structures that can be used militarily to create opportunities for themselves. I'm talking about the Imperium. So that's what they're doing, and when they get to 1DQ, that's why they're taking that on last. It's not that they don't want to take on 1DQ now, but if they take on 1DQ now, there may be opportunities for the people in 1DQ to use systems around them that have structures still in them, even if it's just a shipyard or a mining facility. They can still use those to tether on and stuff. So you want to take all that away, and once you limit their options, they really have to think out of the box in order to fight creatively. And I think the options just go away. So I think that's why you're seeing the vice grip coming down slowly, and they're wiping everything out. They don't want any attacks from behind them. They don't want any secret reinforcement deal with anybody else to interfere. They literally want to isolate and close in and attack. And in doing so, they also want to every day demonstrate that the structures are just being destroyed left and right and left and right. And that's what that chart that we showed you is all about. It's to remind them that, did I close it? There it is. It's to remind the Imperium every day there's a check mark going up here, and you're just going to see this accelerate. So that's what's going to work on the psyche of the Imperium players.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely reasons to go for a headshot, and arguably Pappy did in the very early days of the war. One of the things they did was basically go straight up to 1DQ and put threat into it. But they also learned that Goonswarm or the Imperium was very, very interested in defending 1DQ and had the will to do so, but didn't have the will to defend the rest of their regions nearly as much. And they broadcasted this very early. And if you combine that with, as I mentioned earlier, the Imperium really built their psyche around their territory and around their structures and around all their stuff and how powerful and how better than everybody else they were and how much more they were making than everybody else. And so this isn't just a strike against Imperium. This is a strike against what the Imperium was.
Because that attracts players, right? I mean, what the Imperium was masterful at was setting up a situation that invited players in. You want a safe environment in nullsec, safe-ish, to rat. We are going to provide that for you, and you'll be able to make your fortune with us. And we'll take a little cut of that fortune, but mostly you'll keep your fortune. And that was a very powerful recruiting tool. So if you're going to join a nullsec group, which one are you going to join? The most stable, the one with the most future, the place that I can actually invest a year and not worry about it. And Imperium was definitely that for more than 1 year, for 3 or 4 years.
So if you know that there's an area in which your enemy is strong, but you also know that that there are other areas that they're weak, but also care about, you can push them to force them to kind of turtle up into their strong position and then cause as much damage around them. I do this in faction warfare. Like, if somebody comes in and tries to kite, they want to peel off people. They're a smaller force. They want to try to get people to come out and get killed. We pull in tight because that way that forces them to either come in and get killed, or they can just sit there and watch us complete it. And the thing is that making the person sit there and watch while the timer ticks down, chances are eventually they're going to make a mistake. It's going to upset them. It's going to get in their head, and they're going to get angry, and they're going to want to do something about it, even if they already knew what they were doing when they went into the situation. And so anybody who can do something about it wants to do something about it for every single one of these Keepstars that are going down, no matter how nonchalant they are. And then on the other side, the people who have their stuff in these places, the people who joined the Imperium because they believed these things about how strong the Imperium is. When the Imperium wave these things off and say that they're not important, they're calling people's stuff not important, and it's important to those guys. And so this is really that time in which it's about, who's going to blink, who's going to fold, who has the will to continue. And I think that Pappy has identified that making this process take a long time, and making the process of them destroying all of their stuff and forcing Imperium to effectively forcing the world to watch, is by far the more effective strategy in the long run. We'll see how it plays out.
All right, so Agent Black Bear says, as an Imperium line member, I don't care about those red crosses at all. I assume they're all going to be red before 1DQ, and Wormius follows up, 1DQ will never fall. And
right, and that goes back to what I was
saying.
Which is that the Imperium, however, have put a lot of effort into ensuring that their membership understand what their actual goals are and has no confusion as to what their plans are, what their successes are, what, all that sort of stuff. So that way, when Pappy does come out and say, look at all these things we're burning, it's the things that you liked, all of those things that you liked, it's all burning now, then the Imperium guys can be like,
Stop
yeah, but we don't
yourself.
really care about that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
the Imperium guys can be like, it's the, that's not us. We know who we are, right? And so that's the two narratives. We have the Pappy narrative where it's like all is lost. You might as well just give up. We're going to just, months of pain and misery and fire and no ratting. And the Imperium, we're not going to let them break us, which is important because the Imperium, coming from the Goon Swarm, coming from something awful, that is the forge in which they were born, right? Like when they first joined EVE Online, they fought Bob, which was basically the most powerful force at that time, and Bob thought that they would just be able to crush them and then therefore crush their morale. But since Goon Swarm and later the Imperium formed the locus of their identity outside of their in-game success in EVE Online specifically, they survive that kind of destruction in a way that a lot of other alliances would just simply fail Cascade. So it'll be interesting to see how the next few months play out. I don't think either side, I don't think you could, as a third party, look back and say one side or the other's theory about how this is going to play out is necessarily 100% locked in.
Yeah, well, we look at track record, and so far everything that Pappy said they were going to do, they've been accomplishing. So you can't just say it's even Steven. There's a scoreboard, and straight up analysis. Imperium is losing this war, and Delve is fallen. That's a straight up obvious analysis to me. But 1DQ can turn it all around if it can exist. If it never falls, there's either no end to the war, or, as Villy said, Pappy loses. So it's not over yet. Okay.
Right, but I mean, Pappy's goal is to continue this even after 1DQ. The goal was to suppress the Imperium. So it doesn't actually matter. The military victories actually don't. All of that just feeds into who loses the will first.
Isn't that interesting? That's why this is a different war. It's not about the territory. It's about the It's about the denial of gameplay, really. It's very interesting. Okay, we're going to move on because we have a guest that we want to introduce you to. And to introduce him, we have Gregorian here with us. Gregorian, how's it going?
Hi, I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Let me adjust you because you're a bit on the quiet side. We'll get our mic situation worked out. Try that again, but don't get any closer to the mic. Just try it again.
This evening?
Yeah, one more time.
How are you this evening?
There you go. Thank you. All right. Introduce us to Taylorin, or as he is also known. Oh, let's see.
Analiese is a director and fleet commander in my previous corporation, Snigvoff Waffles. And they've since I left, they've gone on a deployment around the Syndicate area, and I've recently had a few fights with longtime rivals, the Know Nothings, and their alliance, I Will End Your Hole. And they've gotten up to some interesting stuff in the Syndicate and Solitude area.
All right, welcome.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Great. Let me make sure your audio works out so we don't have to fix it in post. Give me a 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
That's good. Thank you. All right, how's it going? Tell us about Waffles and what you're up to and where it is that you're operating.
Well, so we were just hanging out in Syndicate. No, it's a bit more complicated than that, of course. But we've been living down in Syndicate since shortly after we withdrew from the war. We left Horde and withdrew from the war that you guys were just talking about 6 months ago, I want to say, just because our
October.
Really finding the content, the big F1 fleets that much of a draw. So we decided, hey, we're going to go make our own path as a small block in Eve. Not exactly the best, the easiest place to live, but it's where we wanted to try to live. So we went down to Syndicate. We took some fights with the locals there and secured eventually some space for ourselves, some Athenors, some income, all that sort of stuff. Where this story really picks up is a couple of weeks ago, where our old friends, there's a long and convoluted history with the organization that's now known as I Will End Your Hole that I'd be happy to go into, move back in, and we've been having some interesting fights with them in the last couple of weeks.
All right, cool. There's your picture. All right, yeah. What are the interesting fights? Tell us about that.
So the most interesting engagements happened this last week. About a week ago, we saw they reinforced a couple of our staging structures into armor in our current staging. And so, we're formed up, we're ready to take fight for these because we're quite attached to them at this point. And they decided not to push our structures. So we're all formed up and we're looking for some place to go. And we notice, hey, someone pushed one of their Athenors into armor timer. It comes out in an hour. Let's go see if we can pick a fight there instead. So we do. We bridge in at the start of the armor timer. The structure eventually repairs, but we get a couple of dread waves back and forth. It turns into a nice 90 billion-esque brawl. We came out on top 20 to 50, if I recall. But it was a fun fight on both sides, triage going down, armor brawling battleships, that sort of thing. It's one of the styles of gameplay I most like in Eve, to be honest. Which leads us to these last couple of days. We see on Monday that they're anchoring. First of all, they push our structures again, but we were kind of expecting that after the fight. And then after they push our structures, we see that they're anchoring an Asbel in their home system in Losec Solitude. And it's like, this seems a little ambitious. So I talked with the rest of the Waffles command team, the DUR team. We don't want to let this Asbel get anchored. That Asbel is basically going to be the start of a capital manufacturing base so that they can out-sustain us on the kind of capital and heavy armor-based warfare that we like to do. So as we're keeping eyes on system, of course. But as we're looking at this timer counting down, we start seeing NSH characters going through local. For those who are not familiar, NSH is a nullsectionia slupen. If I'm
Nice. That was nice. Yeah.
They stole their name from LSH, of course. They're not actually related. They're a mainly U.S. time zone organization that does a lot of mercenary contracts and is I would call mid to large sized block. They're not a horde. They're not a goons, but they could put 100 characters in fleet pretty easily if they need to. And so we start seeing their eyes and Sino characters burning through there. They kill a Titan in Placid a couple of days before that. We're like, we really love Dread Brawls. Like, Dread Brawls are fantastic, but Dread Brawls where you get 50 Dreads dropped on you after you commit your initial wave are less fun. So we start running locates on NSH Dreads, and surprise, surprise, every single locate we come back has NSH Dreads logged off in a system within jump range of I Will End Your Hole's home staging. We're like, this is just looking like a bad time if we commit caps. We're down to 6 hours before the timer here, and it's like, well, our plan was to drop triage and heavy armor, and now we simply can't do that. How are we going to kill this thing? We get to talking with a couple of people, most specifically TD-Sin, the Dark Space Initiative, and we're like, well, what if we just take all our friends, buy healers from Jita, get them jump freighted down, and try to kill the structure? And that ended up being more or less what happened. We formed up, we brought in a Gila fleet, about 60, 70 people between Waffles, Free Range Chickens, the Dark Space Initiative, some Shadow Cartel USTZ line members, and a couple other local friends. And we just start shooting this Asbel as it comes out of Anchor. As expected, I Will End Your Hole committed heavy armor battleships and triage to the grid. We took one engagement with them at the very start where we managed to wipe out most of their sub-capital logistics wing, and after we accomplished that, we basically just ran away from them in 50 MN Helas because they kept warping triage after us. There's a couple other things that they could have done, but I won't elaborate on that too much. But when this Asbel gets down to 10% hull, what do we see but 100-man spike in the suspected NSH staging system? They immediately jump clone a subfleet down and warp in 55 legions. And at that point, they landed on grid about when the structure dies. We warped out and docked up.
Nice.
So that's Tuesday night, USTZ. We're like, well, what do we know? But about an hour later, they anchor another Asbel where we just blew the one up. And so at this point, it becomes a question of, we sit down with the Waffles command team and we're like, can we take this fight if we expect NSH to come again? What do we do? And how do we... The key question that we have to ask ourselves is, if I Will End Your Hole, what do we do to counter that Gila fleet we just brought to destroy your structure? And so how do we counter what they counter with? You have to kind of play 2 or 3 steps ahead, especially if you don't have, say, capitals to rely on to force project. And so that's brought us into Wednesday. Wednesday, we decided to refit the entire Gila fleet that we shipped down to 100 MN. So that resulted in a few more jump freighter runs for our wonderful logistics guys. And it started in Wednesday with our structure defense timers. I honestly didn't expect NSH to show up to the offensive timers, but there they were. The Dark Space Initiative had contacts in dock workers who offered to come along for the defensive timer. It took it from a 40 versus 90 fight to a 90 versus 90 subcap brawl, which was a lot of fun. We won fairly convincingly in that fight, again, mostly by targeting logistics and forcing them to commit to triage. Unfortunately, committing to triage doesn't work as well when you're on a structure that's fit to kill capitals. And then on Wednesday night, we brought 100 MN Gila fleet to their Asbel, and with the aid of a 50-man RC fleet headed up by Last Spartan, we were able to kite around do a bit of damage to their subcap fleets, and kill the Asbel.
Nice. So 2 Asbels, you can see them here on the on your kill board. Let me just make sure you can see your logo there. For Waffles, inside of Solitude and Syndicate, those 2 areas are related. So that's 12 billion gone, just like that.
The actual toll is much higher than that. The Tuesday night fight wasn't particularly bloody, but they lost about... I have the battle report here. Let me pull it up.
Mm-hmm.
I could put it in chat for you somewhere.
Put it in chat.
Hey, we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So should I expose the grand plot?
Yeah, while we're looking for that, go ahead. Tell the people.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I am actually outside of not my normal star, as some people have noticed, and I also earlier today tweeted a couple of hints as to what we're about to do. And of course, all the spies in Convocation of Imperiums know what's happening. But what I'm about to do is I am going to dock up, flip over to Faction Warfare, and with my guys, we're going to go run large complexes in a Marauder. So I'm going to be in a Kronos, in large complexes in Faction Warfare. And I call this ice fishing because people have to come into the complexes to fight us. So we'll see how well that works out. I'm trying to do the whole thing. You know, they say make your own content. It's a sandbox. This is a good example of what we're going to do. So
Let's do that.
I'll have you guys rate us over when we're done. So I'm going to let you guys finish up with what you're talking and try to get my guys situated so that way we don't die horribly. I mean, immediately.
I will. Feeding with Marauders is something we have a great amount of experience with us, and after the buffs, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, people keep telling me that people don't PvP with Marauders, and with the large complexes now being gated to being battleships. We'll talk about it when we're on the other side. I'll see you guys soon.
All right, take care. Thanks, Ash.
New large complexes, you can actually use the please drop carriers on me button without getting carriers dropped on you. It's an interesting experience.
Right, so tell us about this battle report here, or these are basically just evidence of what happened. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so those were 2 quite bloody battles, and I couldn't be proud of more than a few people for making them happen that I have to shout out in that since I'm on stream.
Sure.
First of all would be our recon team, who has done an excellent job of just keeping eyes, places, scouting out. They spent, I don't even know how long they spent, but they spent the better part of the day on Wednesday scanning 5 or 6 different regions of space to look for routes for allies to come in. And then the command team, who works with us during our fleet fights. I would love to say, hey, I'm a great up-and-coming FC, but that's as much as I would like it to be true. You can't FC a fleet like that alone. And it's so valuable to have someone who in our corporation who's like, hey, you've anchored for 100 MN helos before. Can you do anchoring for this fleet while I concentrate on other things? Or I can hear our Hugin pilots talking like, hey, they've switched their anchor to that person, switch your webs to that person, and this personal web primary, and you target paint that guy. And then finally, again, I already said this, but our logistics team, who I could say, hey, I just put 40 helas up on contract. Can you get those down there by 3 hours ago? So all those people, without that, it won't work. And we had a lot of allies who came in to make these fights somewhat even.
Yeah. That's really nice. You spread the credit around. It's not just the FC, it's the whole team.
Recon and logistics guys in Waffles are really good. I was in Recon, and the experience I had in there was really nice, and I was always consistently impressed with the logistics people.
Yeah, it's a mark of a very healthy alliance. Logistics, good logistics, and corporations too.
Yep. So our next step forward is, I think this particular I'm not sure what steps this particular conflict will take, because I think they've been, I think their momentum has taken a little bit of a hit in the last week or so, with losing about 100 bill or so. 100 bill plus personally, plus whatever they promised NSH to get them down there, because I don't believe that they're there out of the charity of their heart. As far as other things for Waffles, our guys are out running around, probably feeding, because I think they're celebrating someone's birthday tonight. And we have some Euro conflicts that we've been partaking in, which haven't been Euro TZ conflicts that we've been partaking in, which haven't popped off quite as hard, but are fun nonetheless.
Good. Well, Analiese, is it? Analiese Aubernet? Analiese Aubernet.
Indeed.
Got it. All right. Very nice to meet you and talk with you from Waffles FC there. They're doing a bunch of sorties in Syndicate and even, I was about to say Solitaire, but Solitude. So good luck to you guys there in Waffles and enjoy your PvP. It sounds like you are.
I do greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregorian, and thank Ashtarothi for being around. This brings us to the end of the show today, but we're going to run right over to Ashtarothi's channel and watch him sacrifice a marauder. Stay tuned as we raid. Thank you, everyone, for watching Talking in Stations. It's the end of the week. It's a big week. We will be back next week. We'll see you then on Talking in Stations.